My name is Angelina Nduku.
My name is David Maillu.
I focused on Bantu linguistics and wrote a thesis on theoretical issues in the grammar of Kikamba.
David Maillu is David Maillu, full stop. I'm a writer.
My PhD is in linguistics.
My doctorate degree is in African literature and political philosophy.
My name is Mutua, DSM.
My name's Jeremiah Moteo Kitunda.
I was brought up and subjected to KAMBA CULTURE up to my age of 16. I was going through KAMBA CULTURE.
My name is Kithaka Mberia. I am a professor of linguistics and languages at the University of Nairobi, where I have been teaching for the last 40 years.
I was at Kenyatta University for 14 years, and right now I've been at USIU for close to 20 years.
I went to University of Nairobi, and then I got my bachelor degree there, did my master in history. And then I moved to United States of America. I went to Miami University of Ohio, where I got another master's in history, and moved to University of Wisconsin, Madison, where I got my PhD in history. And became a professor from 2004 at the University of Eugene, Oregon, on the west coast of United States, before moving to the highlands, to the mountains of Appalachia at Appalachian State University of North Carolina, where I have been teaching for the last, I think, 16, 17 years.
I've been in lobbying groups for mother tongue education, particularly for the implementation of the Kenyan language in education policy that requires that children are taught in their mother tongue in class 1 to class 3. So I've been in groups and I've worked on materials, even for teaching literacy in Kikamba through some projects with NGOs.
I've tried as much as possible to make the best use of whatever I have as a Akamba person. It has influenced my writing, my thinking.
Kenya is very good at exporting tea, coffee, or cultural products. But I consider myself one of the major exporters of Kenyan culture outside Kenya and outside Africa.
I write for my community, I write for Kenyans, I write for Africa, I write for the world.
I'm an artist. I write in drama and poetry, and I am very, very proud of that.
I'm tracing the origin of each individual proverb and the history of that, the cultural and historical circumstances from which those proverbs emerge. This book contains only 2,000 proverbs. And in the future, I will publish the other 5,000 proverbs that I have collected.
My latest Kamba book is, I did it, I don't know whether you know about the prophetess Siokimau. I wrote that book, it's called Wasiawa Siokimau, so that should be a good thing for Kamba community, trying to recapture what we are missing.
Scholars have argued that Kamba were born about 1500, coinciding with the coming of Vasco da Gama to Eastern Africa. And in this book, I'm arguing that Kamba and most East African communities are older than that. You can trace their history through different methods all the way back to the birth of Christ and then beyond. That's what I'm doing.
My name is Raphael Munavu. I used to be a professor of chemistry at the University of Nairobi, but also at Egerton University, Moi University, and other universities as well. I'm retired now, but in addition to teaching science is chemistry, I also have a leaning towards indigenous knowledges, indigenous culture, and its importance in determining who our societies are and the direction that we are taking as a nation and as countries. So I am now broad-minded.
The reality, I have actually published much more than anyone else in the continent. I have written a lot, many books for children. I think for children I have over 40 titles, and all my publications are above 80, and so I have actually written a lot, and fiction, non-fiction. I'm a poet, I'm a philosopher, I'm a theologian. Within all those backgrounds, I have written works.
Currently, I'm involved in community services. I'm involved a little bit with trying to persuade the nation that our young people must take up sciences. I'm the chairman of the Kenya National Academy of Sciences, which is the organization that brings all scientists together in Kenya to articulate and to find out the needs that the nation should use, how the nation should capitalize and use scientists to bring about development. Culture is a very broad context.
My heart is in culture.
Whatever you do, you know, education you have, what you eat, everything, that is the library of living. That is culture, what culture is.
Culture is the nexus. It is the pillar of who we are as communities. It is how we look at each other. It is how we define our past, project our future, how we relate with ourselves and with other nations and with other communities. So culture, in a way, is the context in which we conduct our lives, the context in which we are able to ask ourselves, how developed are we as a community? Where do we want to go? And if we want to go, what are the pillars and the boundaries that we should take?
And it is very important for members of a given culture to learn their culture, to understand why they do things the way they do, why their ancestors have done things the way they did.
Culture is the library of how you have always lived.
There's material culture and there is a non-material culture. It's actually the totality, their music, their dance, their art, their values, norms, their worship, their religion. It's a totality of a people's way of life.
When you talk about Modokoi, when you talk about how people marry, that is Kamba culture, and my friend Kyengo is part of that culture. But when somebody called Mudusi in Matu, in Kangundo, in Gabonseni, is sitting that nyamachoma with pilipili and kachumbari and ugali, is now engaged in something much higher than Kamba culture, that is Kenyan culture. Because nyamachoma, kachumbari is part of Kenyan culture. There's a young lady there called, I was told she's called Munavu. Now Munavu, I mean, when she was sitting there, I looked at her and I noticed that she's dressed, you know, she has shoes and she has maroon trousers and she has a green t-shirt and she has glasses. The way Munavu is dressed, believe me, is exactly the way a young woman is dressed in Barcelona today. I mean, besides what I've said, Munavu has other pieces of attire, but the way she's dressed, it's exactly the way a young woman like her is dressed in Jerusalem. In other words, whereas Munavu enjoys and appreciates Kamba culture, because she speaks Kikamba and she can enjoy Muthokoi. And she speaks Sheng, which is part of the Kenyan culture. There is another level, the third layer is that Mutheo also belongs to this, to the international culture.
Communities are what they are now and who they are because of their culture.
Culture is people's religion. That is the word.
It is necessary to learn about one's culture.
So that
You also know why you value some things,
we should be able to project how our great-grandchildren will also behave. How will they respect their elders? How will they treat their parents? How will they treat each other? How will they treat other communities and so on?
That is what we are calling culture. People are born and raised in cultures, and they give them a sense of direction, a sense of living, some meaning.
Culture is the totality of people's way of doing things. People's life, people's dreams, people's aspirations, people's fears. And culture is always changing dynamic. So that what we call Kamba culture today is not exactly Kamba culture 100 years ago. And what will be Kamba culture in 2090 is not exactly what Kamba culture is today.
At some point, we were not doing the dances the way we do them. Either we borrowed from other people or we innovated. Originally, we were not circumcising. We learned that from the Varaka, Mberia, and the Mberia say they no kajwa tonile kuwaru kere mundu airengwa roiro. That's a statement from the Mberia and the Embu. And they say that it is the Maasai who showed them how to cut when they met them in Ruiru, or in the neighborhood of Ruiru. That is subject to argument. Some sections of the Kamba might have acquired or borrowed the art of circumcision from the Mount Kenya area, others from further south. Okay? And so we changed from being a people without circumcision to a people who are extremely devoted to cutting. And there are a lot of things that change.
There are changes that are going to emerge, and therefore culture must resonate with what is happening globally. We must also respond to what is happening globally. I think issues of, for example, witchcraft is just a question of perception. In our culture, for example, we will say that somebody who is sick but we don't understand where the disease came from, we say he has been bewitched. To be cured, then you go to a witch doctor, somebody who will try to cure you. Now, in the Western context, there are some diseases that are very difficult. They are not necessarily physical diseases, and you go to a psychologist or psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist just discusses with you and says that he understands you and so on, and tells you do this, behave this way, and your disease will disappear. So as far as culture is concerned, certain aspects of culture will change moving forward. And I can't say they are necessarily bad. I think we must ask ourselves, how do we adopt them? If you get sick today, you go to the hospital, you go to buy drugs from the pharmacist. But where did those drugs come from? They came from our traditional indigenous culture.
So I want us to understand what we mean by culture is the totality of people's way of life, and that totality includes not only the food they eat, not only the language they speak, not only the social structure, not only the institutions in the society, but also in terms of aspirations and dreams and wishes, etc.
every civilized community worth its salt loves digging into its cultural base, because that is a library to know how they lived and the others. And so to think that you can ignore your culture and take other people's culture and be comfortable, this is very strange.
You find yourself mimicking other people, you know. And I will just give you, in this Nairobi, you are marrying a Mkamba, and then you are going to tell your mother and your sisters to go and stand at the gate in Runda and sing. What songs will they sing? Because that was not part of our practice. They are lost.
You can't understand other cultures if you don't understand your own.
And the way you have always been living, we say this is how God wanted. So this is the culture is embracing the entire way of life. So anyone, I repeat, anyone who thinks that one can't do it, one can do away with the traditional culture, and this is a lost person.
There's something they call in religion syncretism. They've just mixed too many of the cultures around them that they look lost. And I think one of the challenging things is the interaction in the modern world that never used to be there. So a person is growing up in Nairobi, and the neighbor is a Luo, and the other one is a Gikuyu, and the other one is a Giriama. And kind of without attention, they just end up picking bits and pieces. And sometimes they just pick the bits and pieces that are glorious and fun to have. And so they end up having no grounding in anything.
If you don't know your culture, then you are nobody.
That's what the Kiswahili would say, mukosa kabila. You just you have a little of this and a little of that. Now, it is really important for one to know one's culture. I can't repeat that, I can't overemphasize that, because a culture defines you. It gives you identity.
When Europeans came here, they were selling their cultures. You go to China, they love their culture. You go to Japan, every important civilization loves its culture. And if Africans do not love their culture, then they are lost people. When
people are going for payment of dowry, everybody has begun talking of rurasho, as if the other people do not have a word. So some friends of mine and I have just said, we will either call it Udhoni or it is Ngasia, and we will use our own words. As long as it is not a Gikuyu marrying our daughter, and even if it's a Gikuyu marrying our daughter, it will be rurasho to them, it will be Ngasia to us.
I'm a Kamba man, and I act from the Kamba background, to analyze the rest of the world.
Kambas have been circumcising since time immemorial. And when white people came here, probably they gave us the impression that, there's a primitive. You know what? Experts in medicine have told us that indeed circumcision of boys is very good, because they have told us that circumcision of boys reduces the incidence of sexually transmitted diseases. So, whereas the Kamba should abandon, hunting, they should abandon witchcraft, they should tell people that circumcision is very good. In fact, as we talk today, doctors are telling people, including communities that never circumcised. I can tell you, as we talk here tonight, some of the communities in Kenya that don't have traditional circumcised are now circumcising, because it makes a lot of scientific sense to circumcise boys. On and on and on and on. So indeed, the aspects, what we need to do is to go through some kind of checklist and say, hunting is harmful, killing animals is harmful, etc. is harmful, but there's nothing harmful about people speaking Kikamba. There's nothing harmful about somebody called Wikali or being called Kyoko. On and on and on. So when I say I support culture, you can't support culture 100%. There are certain minors, there are certain aspects you must subtract. that we have to do away with witchcraft. We have to do away with the hunting. We have to do away with some cultural attitudes where if you do very well, some of them might threaten to kill your children. Those are harmful practices. But I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of aspects of Kamba culture are positive and we need to promote them.
Over the years now, clitorindectomy has been described as female genital mutilation. And we have embraced the practice of condemning it. All right? So we have not precisely abandoned our culture. We have only changed. And the change is inevitable. Every generation writes its own culture, or designs its own culture. That's what has happened.
I find it very difficult to say this is primitive, but all cultures of the world, whether British, Japanese, or what, there are things that they think, oh, that one, we don't need it at the moment.
Women in Kikamba, they are not allowed to eat tank. That is discrimination, so we can do away with that.
For example, the way we dressed traditionally, you don't need to dress like that.
Today, who goes to a shrine? Nobody. And for that reason, we can dispense with to wash at a tree, or to offer a god at a tree, a shrine.
You know, the Kambas and the Dharakas, are very good at shooting arrows. You know, they're very, very good. But you know what? You really don't want to kill animals. You don't want to kill animals. So then I would say part of the traditional Kamba culture is hunting. You know, they're very, very good shooters. But today, we need to discard that. Say, you don't take your arrows and bows and go and kill elephants, go and kill buffaloes, go and kill antelopes, etc., etc. We discard that.
There were rituals that would be undertaken that would include alcohol, sometimes milk, and sometimes a pouring of blood. And the pouring of blood, many times that is sacrifice. And so there are some of those that I would not practice. And I would not encourage my children to practice. But I would not throw them away. I would want them documented. I would want them archived somewhere where it would show. And it's not a part of the culture. I would want to judge those who are practicing. But as a Christian, I would evangelize them and see whether they would change from it. But it does serve a purpose in the life, in the wellness, in the psychological, mental health part of the human being. Because I have offended my ancestors, I have offended God, I have offended people, and I am making amends. And once I have made amends, I have peace. I have I've restored cognitive peace in my mind. I no longer have dissonance. So there are those practices, sacrifices particularly, that I wouldn't practice, but I would want them documented. I would say even some of the embarrassing ones, I would want them documented because they existed. And people grow and evolve. And the fact that you are not practicing it now does not make it bad.
The houses we lived in, if it was grass and thatched, we don't have to go into that.
Circumcision rites for the girl child, is it necessary? It is not necessary.
It's harmful. So if there's a community that is dealing with FGM, then we need to discard that.
All cultures keep on changing, but you have culture as your base to build a house to accommodate your cultural values. That is what is very important.
I'm alive today because of my name. Yeah? Three of my elder brothers who were born died when they were being born at Kikambuan, around Kikambuan. So now when I was being born, my family, my father and mother, did consultation, and they were told the only way that this young person you are going to give birth to is going to survive is, number one, don't give birth to the same place where you were giving birth. Get out of the house and go and give birth somewhere else, and give this young person a very bad name. That's why I was called Muatine. So that now the gods out there will not be attracted to me. And that is the gods out there. And that's why I'm alive today. Now, I can't ignore that. That I have been told. And what basis do I have to say that is not correct? I don't have. I don't have.
We are killing our own language and blaming colonialism. Colonialism is 60 years dead. And nobody is here is telling anybody you can't do things the way you find them convenient.
My name is Kithaka Mberia. Kithaka is not my original name. I got the name Kithaka from the family tradition doctor because there were so many herbs. I used to be so sickly when I was young, and there were so many herbs in my mother's heart. So then I changed from my original name to become Kithaka, you know. So I have so much respect for herbalists. I have so much respect for diviners. Diviner, why do I say diviner? Because in the Raka, before you went to war, you have to be blessed by the diviner. Sometimes before people are circumcised, to make sure that the operation goes on well, you are blessed. But so then we should be careful not to mix things. That a witch and a herbalist stroke diviner are totally different things. Those are perfect. We need to maintain that.
Origin, primitive means nearer the origin. And if the origin is God, then primitive means nearer God. So it is good.
Civilization has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with culture. One can say in anthropological talk that every community has its civilization. One can talk about African civilization, European civilization, Chinese civilization, Indian civilization. That is what it is. So that has nothing to do with the one is, as I said repeatedly, that is the culture is actually the religion of the community.
Imposing our own opinion on people is itself the hallmark of primitivity.
Let's understand the Kamba culture, cultural practices, and we ask ourselves, are they relevant today because of what is happening globally? And therefore, we say, let's keep them on the side moving forward. That is what has happened. I include dressing, for example. Now we are dressing differently. We are not dressing the way we used to dress. People are not playing the drums, kidembe, and so on, because other things have come, and now we appreciate music in different contexts. So in terms of aspects of culture, I would be very careful saying that this is bad. I would simply say this may not be relevant for our culture now, so let's keep it on the side. But it is very important for our future generation to know and understand them. One of the most important things we have in this country is museums to maintain our national indigenous knowledge and technologies. The reason why we are maintaining them is not to say that we will use them in future, but for our future generation to understand that there were these systems with us.
Why they do particular things, why they would want to pour a little food before they eat, why they wouldn't leave the pot empty, so that when the spirits come, they don't find nothing in the pot. If you are able to even study and document before those people leave us, those people who are practicing, and it becomes one of the things that others can study. It becomes something that a Mukamba can look at and say, I think this one, when the missionaries came, this was thrown away, but I think it shouldn't have been thrown away. They misunderstood the purpose of this. The purpose of this aspect of this culture can still be retained by Christians, by people who are in the Christian religion.
Kamba culture gives a sense of direction to 11% of the Kenyan population. So if the Kamba comprise or compose 11% of the Kenyan population, then that culture is crucially important.